Chester as a warm-up. Are you ready? Here we go. Chester, have you heard about Harry? Just got back from the army. I hear he knows how to wear a rose. Hip, hip, hooray for the army. Little faster, here we go. Chester, have you heard about Harry? Just got back from the army. I hear he knows how to wear a rose. Hip, hip, hooray for the army. Little faster yet, here we go. Chester, have you heard about Harry? Just got back from the army. I hear he knows how to wear a rose. Hip, hip, hooray for the army. Little faster, here we go. Chester, have you heard about Harry? Just got back from the army. I hear he knows how to wear a rose. Hip, hip, hooray for the army. Me. Okay, we were close, We can do it one more time. We're gonna get it right this time. I'm gonna get it right this time. You probably did. Here we go. Ready, sing. Chester, have you heard about Harry? Just got back from the army. I hear he knows how to wear a rose. Hip, hip, hooray for the army. I was closer. Maybe. I don't know. Good job getting warmed up with me, singing along fast and moving along fast, I hope. Let's move on to the next part of our lesson. Okay, we have a few more animals to check out in Carnival of the Animals. This time, we're going to start with the aviary. So look in your booklet for the aviary. The music in this movement is played by the strings, piano, and flute. Which one of those do you think is going to be representing the bird? Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be the flute as well. So it's supposed to sound like a flock of birds fluttering and flapping their wings. The flute plays a beautiful melody that sounds like the singing of a bird. So let's listen to the aviary, and then we can talk about what we noticed and how it made you feel. So what did you notice about the aviary? Could you hear the birds? Yes, I noticed that Camille Saint-Saëns definitely used the instruments to try to imitate the sounds of birds. And I feel like I heard a lot of different birds. What else did you notice? Did you feel like the tempo was fast or slow? Did you feel like the dynamics were mostly loud, mostly soft? All right, well, you write down what else you noticed. This music made me feel. This makes me feel happy. How does it make you feel? Yeah, maybe energetic, maybe silly, maybe fun. All right, well, you jot down what it made you feel and then be ready to move on to our next animal. All right, the pianists. Now, I know you're saying, pianos are not animals, Mrs. Piles. This doesn't make any sense. Well, Camille Saint-Saëns was trying to make a joke that two piano players practicing their warm-ups were similar and acting like animals, even though, well, and humans are animals technically, right? So he's trying to make just this joke about pianists being animals. But I do love this movement because it really shows off these piano players' skills. And if you like to practice your scales on your instrument, this is a great opportunity to hear these folks practicing their scales. So let's listen. So what did you notice about the movement? I noticed that the notes were going up and down because they were practicing their scales. What else did you notice? Did you think the tempo was fast? And remember, in music, we would call that allegro. What else did you notice? How did it make you feel? This one makes me feel energized. How did it make you feel? All right, well, I hope you'll write it down and share with me because I would love to hear. Here's the next movement. The fossils. This is probably my favorite one. I think it sounds really fun. So this movement is played by the most instruments I think we've seen at once so far. It's the xylophone, the string family, the piano, and the clarinet. The composer uses the xylophone to sound like bones clacking together, like fossil bones, right? And to create the image of skeletons dancing. So, see if you can hear those things as you listen to our fossils movement. All right, what did you notice about the movement? Could you hear the xylophone supposed to sound like the skeletons dancing or the bones clacking together? I definitely could. What about the tempo? Yes, I agree. I definitely thought the tempo for this one was fast, so I would say allegro for sure. What else? What about the dynamics? Or how were the instruments used that you thought were interesting? I really liked the xylophone part for sure. I thought that was super interesting. And I felt like there were some moments where the instruments suddenly played very loud, and that was really exciting. How did this music make you feel? Yeah, this one, so I could say it makes me feel a little creepy because of the skeletons dancing. It also makes me feel excited because of the fast tempo. How else did it make you feel? All right, well, again, I hope you'll share with me in a Google Doc or something, an email, what you noticed and thought and felt about the music. Thanks for checking these out with me. We only have a few more left before we're all done with our Carnival of the Animals study. Ada's Violin is the true story of the recycled Orchestra of Paraguay by Susan Hood, illustrated by Sally Wern-Comport. Ada Rios grew up in a town made of trash. Every morning at dawn, Ada heard the first garbage trucks rumble and roll down the road to Catura. Beep, beep, beep. Backing into the landfill, they tipped their loads up and crash! The trash came tumbling down, 1,500 tons each day. Ada and her friends watched as the gancheros, or recyclers, scrambled, tearing into plastic bags with long-handled hooks, pushing aside moldy produce and grabbing anything they could recycle or sell. The going rates? 5 cents for a pound of cardboard, 10 cents for a pound of plastic. This noisy, stinking, sweltering slum was not the most nurturing place. Ada watched, eyes wide, but she didn't say much. And yet, she liked to imagine each garbage truck was a box of surprises. One never knew what might be inside. Her father had found appliances, toys, perfumes, and antique watches. One woman even discovered a small box full of gold jewelry. Little did Ada know there was a bigger surprise waiting for her in the landfill. Every day, when Ada's parents went to work, Grandmother Miriam cared for Ada and her little sister Noelia. Grandma loved to sing rock and roll songs from the 1960s. The girls grew up to the tunes of the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, and Creedence Clearwater Revival. Ada loved to sing too, but only when no one was listening. Ada's dad brightened the night with stories and songs of great musicians. He turned up the radio and pointed out the sounds each instrument made. Ada heard one above all others. Zing went the strings of the violin. When the girls started school, Grandma returned to work as a recycler, collecting bottles and cans in the city. Classes let out at noon. Young Ada was in charge of Noelia until her parents were done with work. At first, the girls stayed close to home, playing with Grandma Miriam's doggies and making sand cakes in the dirt. Soon, they joined their cousins, playing hide-and-seek or a game of handball in the streets. In time, they ventured farther afield, walking down to the bodega to get candy. But Ada noticed the teenagers hanging out in the alleys, grumbling about life in the landfill looming ahead. What would happen to them, to her, to her little sister? She watched as the older kids turned to gangs and got into fights. One day, when Ada was 11 years old, her grandmother saw a sign posted on the wall of a chapel. Violin, guitar, cello, taught Saturdays at 8 a.m., Fabio Chavez. How Grandma had longed to learn music. Too late for her, maybe, she thought, but not for her granddaughters. She signed them up without asking them, or their parents. Ada's heart sang out. Thanks to her abuela, she could leave her worries behind and learn to play. At the first class, the teacher, Fabio Chavez, had 3 guitars and 2 violins to share. Ada chose a violin right away, but 10 children had signed up. Frustrated, Ada and her friends found that there were not enough instruments to go around. And there was a bigger problem. Everyone quickly realized that the children would need to practice at home, but it wasn't safe to be seen with an expensive instrument in Catura, where a violin is worth more than a house. Watching the children play amid broken glass and rusty metal, Señor Chavez knew he had to do something. He remembered a band called Les Luthiers that made its own instruments. That was it. He asked Nicolas Cola Gomez, a ganchero and carpenter, for help. Señor Gomez found a discarded drum with a big hole in it. What could he use to fix it? He picked through the trash and discovered an old X-ray film. Would that work? It did. Señor Gomez kept experimenting, and others like Tito Romero helped. Inventing instruments wasn't easy, but they fiddled around, discovering which materials hit just the right notes. They transformed oil drums into cellos, water pipes into flutes, and packing crates into guitars. Soon, there were enough instruments for all the children who wanted to play. Ada chose a violin made from an old paint can, an aluminum baking tray, a fork, and pieces of wooden crates. Worthless to thieves, it was invaluable to her. It was a violin of her very own. Señor Chavez set up a strict schedule of 3-hour lessons. The class had no classroom, so they played outside, despite the 100-degree heat and sudden downpours. At first, Ada and the others struggled. Sharps and flats clanged and clashed. Playing an instrument is a process. It doesn't matter if one is rich or poor, ugly, fat, thin. You cannot learn to play an instrument overnight, Señor Chavez told the children. Some kids decided it was too much work and gave up, but not Ada. After lessons, she would practice at home, sometimes 2 hours a day. In time, the screeches, twangs, and tweets hit all the right notes. Their class became a small island where Chavez taught them to respect themselves and one another. Be kind, always say please and thank you. Say you're sorry. Be dedicated when you commit to something, Señor Chavez told the children. Soon, the ragtag crew of kids learned to tune in, to listen to one another, to band together. The recycled orchestra was born. From then on, there was something new in the air in Catura. Gancheros trudging home from the landfill might lift their heads to hear the sounds of Ada's violin, or the strains of Bibi's cello, or the strum of Noelia's guitar. A symphony of sound helped to lift them beyond the heat, the stench, and their aching backs. With her violin, Ada could close her eyes and imagine a different life. She could soar on the high, bright, bittersweet notes to a place far away. She could be who she was meant to be. As Ada's skill grew, so did her confidence. Once timid, she now took center stage playing solos. She helped teach the younger children too. Her teachers and fellow students took note. When she was 12 years old, Ada was named a first violinist. Imagine! She was first at something. Shortly after, she and her 39 fellow musicians were invited to perform concerts in Catura and later in the nearby capital city of Asuncion. Word of this extraordinary orchestra spread. Soon, they were asked to perform in other cities and even other countries. Do you recognize some of these symbols and places where they are from? Ada and her friends flew on their first airplane, stayed in their first hotel, swam in the bright blue waters of Rio de Janeiro, sampled their first pastries and pineapple, and saw sights they never imagined. The world dazzled them, just as they dazzled the world. When Ada was 16, the orchestra received a very special invitation. They were asked to tour with a world-famous rock band. More than 35,000 people awaited them at their first concert stop in Bogota, Colombia. Ada was more than nervous. She didn't know how to enter or how to greet the audience. She went blank. She saw a giant stage with glaring lights and heard people screaming. But she didn't have to worry. As the recycled orchestra took the stage, the people who had paid to see the rock band cheered for them. The enormous audience sang and swayed to the music as the orchestra played, and as their performance came to a close. A crescendo of cheers, chants, and applause resounded across the park. The astonished kids bowed, grinning at one another. They had discovered the surprise waiting in the landfill. Buried in the trash was music, and buried in themselves was something to be proud of. Here is a picture of the actual recycled orchestra and some of their violins that they played on. In Schoology, you'll find another video about the actual recycled orchestra, and you can hear them playing. You can see some of the actual people from this story. So I encourage you to go check that out. I hope you've enjoyed the story of Ada's violin, and it gives you a lot to think about. It definitely gives me a lot to be grateful for when I think about the life that I have, the instruments that I get to see, use, and hear here, and how inspiring it is that those children and those people worked so hard to create this amazing orchestra out of recycled material.
All right, boys and girls. So today we have a song, and it's about petticoats. And a petticoat is basically a big skirt that goes underneath the bigger dress that puffs out the skirt and makes it look really full and very nice. So this is one from early America, right here, about the 1800s or so. And then we have another one here, a little bit older looking, with just some hoops with some rope or something holding it together, and we go underneath the skirt to make it look like this. And then here's another one. So they got more decorative, and they have been in all sorts of sizes, whether it be long or short, different shapes and all sorts of things. Here's another one. And then here's more of a modern one, probably 1950s or so. And then we have, like, for a quinceañera, for our Hispanic Heritage Month, lots of Latin American girls will have a quinceañera when they turn 15 to celebrate becoming a woman. Uh, this is a more modern one. It would go with more for like a prom dress or something like that when you get to high school. And that might be kind of what it looks like with the dress. And then for when you get even older, you might have a wedding dress, and you might want to have it. This looks kind of lifeless without a petticoat. And then you put the petticoat with it, it kind of flushes that dress out and makes it look very nice and very elegant. So different things for different types of dresses. That's why they've adapted to different lengths and everything else. So they have been used in Europe, they've been used in France, Asia, India, all sorts of different places have used petticoats at some point in time. So our song today is about a petticoat, and it's on a lady named Phoebe. So let's learn our song. All right, boys and girls, our song goes, Phoebe in her petticoat, Phoebe in her gown, Phoebe in her petticoat, going down to town. So, can you help me out with that this time with our beat? Ready and go, Phoebe in her petticoat, Phoebe in her gown, Phoebe in her petticoat, going down to town. Copy me, copy me. Phoebe in her petticoat, Phoebe in her gown, Phoebe in her petticoat, going down to town. Let's do that one more time. Here we go. Ready and go. Phoebe in her petticoat, Phoebe in her gown, Phoebe in her petticoat, going down to town. All right, let's do it with our beat this time. Ready and go. Phoebe in her petticoat, Phoebe in her gown, Phoebe in her petticoat, going down to town. This time let's do it with our rhythm. Ready and go. Phoebe in her petticoat, Phoebe in her gown, Phoebe in her petticoat, going down to town. Let's do it again with our body showing those highs and lows. Here we go. Ready and go. Phoebe in her petticoat, Phoebe in her gown, Phoebe in her petticoat, going down to town. Very nice job. Let's move to the next part of our lesson.